So in the article, they highlight those three states. And one of the first states that they highlight here is Nebraska. So in the state of Nebraska, and again, this is legislation that was signed this year. In the state of Nebraska, it says that Nebraska's Republican Governor Jim Pillen signed legislation into law in February that reduces the minimum wage for 14 and 15-year-olds from $15 an hour to $13.50 an hour. And then it limits increases as well. And those increases don't start until 2030. This is, well, let me give the backdrop. So Nebraska, I believe in like 2022, 2023, somewhere in there, they approved a law that the voters of Nebraska voted on to increase minimum wage to $15 an hour. So with this new legislation that has been put forth or enacted and already signed into law, this law will now basically segregate 14 and 15-year-olds and say, well, you can't make the minimum wage. You have to make less than the minimum wage. The problem with this is not only, as I said before, it's kind of reverse age discrimination, but you have many of these 14 and 15-year-olds that work in these facilities. And oftentimes you're seeing this in retail and in restaurants. That's, typically the young, the minor, a minor type of job that many of them do during schools or in the summers. Oftentimes, you have these 14 and 15-year-olds that are working just as hard as some of their counterparts that are adults. Matter of fact, let me play this piece here from uh, KMTV where they talk to a restaurant owner in the state of Nebraska, and she talks about this law specifically and how this is affecting her business. But let me play this from KMTV3 in Nebraska, and then I'll continue on from there. So,
Sergeant Pepper owner Dana Peffer told me the initial minimum wage increase has been tough on her business.
I had to up prices, and I don't want to have to do that, but I obviously have to do that. Otherwise, I cannot stay open. Small business is so hard already.
But she doesn't think the legislature should lower wages for younger employees either.
I don't feel like it's fair for them to use an age to deem how much they get paid, because a lot of times my younger employees actually work harder than my older employees.
Lawmakers also capped future wage increases at a flat 1.75% a year.
and as you heard from that business owner, she has workers that are younger that work harder than some of the older workers at her establishment. So this is where this really comes into um, the picture, where you have younger people working harder and getting paid much less. Now, I can already hear just those who are listening that are in disagreement with, or I should say, in agreement with this. Well, they're young, they've got to work their way up. This is going to motivate them, and I can already hear it. But this is not the case. This is a lot more sinister than just encouraging young people. And I'll, talk about this a little bit further. Not only do you have in the state of Nebraska, do you have 14 to 15-year-olds being affected by this decision, but this also affects workers who are 16 to 19 years old. In that article from The Guardian, it also says that the bill creates a sub minimum training wage for 16 to 19-year-olds, which is set at $13.50 an hour for the first 90 days of employment. So not only do you have the 14 to 15-year-olds being paid this, but for the first 90 days of employment, you also have 16 to 19-year-olds being paid this lower wage. Now, this is an issue for multiple reasons, right? Because it leads to potential exploitation especially for those younger people. And in some cases, you have younger people who are working at these jobs to assist the family with sustaining and maintaining. So now you're paying them less because they're younger is just a recipe for exploitation, especially when you have states not only repealing the amount that they could get paid, but in some states you also have legislation that has eliminated or at least allowed for additional hours to be worked for younger people as well.